All right, so today we're diving deep into Social Security, specifically all those changes coming down the pipeline in 2025. You guys sent in some awesome resources from the Social Security Administration and AARP, so we've got a solid base to work with.
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? These changes, they're going to touch so many people. Whether you're already getting benefits or still figuring out the whole retirement thing, we got to break it down.
Totally. So let's kick things off with everyone's favorite topic, COA adjustments. For 2025, it's looking like a 2.5% COLA. Basically, an extra $50 or so each month for the average retiree. Sounds kind of nice at first glance, huh?
Oh, it's definitely a plus, no doubt. But here's where it gets tricky. A lot of folks are saying this 2.5%, it might not really keep pace with, the actual costs seniors are dealing with, especially when you think about healthcare, housing, all that.
So it's more than just seeing a bigger number on that check.
Exactly. There's this whole debate about whether EOA, the way they calculate it, truly reflects how much more expensive life's getting for retirees. Think back to 2023, that 8.7% COLA.
Oh, yeah. That felt like winning the lottery almost. Why is it so different this time?
Inflation, that's the key. When inflation chills out, COLA follows suit. And that's kind of where we are now.
And of course, right on cue, Medicare Part B premiums are jumping up too, from $174.70 to $185. Ugh. Talk about taking a step back after taking two forward.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a bit of a bummer. For a lot of people, that Medicare hike is going to eat right into that COA bump.
So we got to look at the whole picture, right? Not just each piece in isolation.
Absolutely. The big picture is key.
All right, now for something that could totally shake things up. No more just popping into the Social Security office. Starting January 6th, 2025, you're going to need an appointment for almost everything.
Big change, right. The SSA, what they're saying is this is all about efficiency, making the whole experience better for everyone, less hanging around, more targeted help, that sort of thing.
Sounds good in theory, but I'm kind of curious, how's it going to actually work? Have you heard any feedback from folks who've already dealt with the appointment system?
It's been mixed, Some people are loving it, shorter waits, everything's more organized, they appreciate that. But for others, it's a hassle. The whole scheduling thing especially.
Yeah, I bet. Especially for folks who aren't as comfortable with technology. Or maybe have a hard time with those phone systems,
Definitely. The SSA, they're trying to make it smooth, but you know how it is. There'll be bumps along the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Huh.
But hang on, what about emergencies? Like, do you really got to schedule an appointment if something urgent comes up?
Don't worry, they've thought of that. The SSA said they'll make exceptions for those situations. Urgent stuff, special needs, whatever it is. You can still walk in and get the help you need.
Okay, that's good to hear. At least they're not totally shutting the door on people who need help right away.
Absolutely. Got to have that flexibility.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about full retirement age. Always a moving target, am I right? For folks born in 58, it's 66 in 8 months now. And if you were born in 59, hold on tight, it's 66 in 10 months. Why do they keep pushing it back?
Well, it all ties back to those things we were talking about earlier. People are living longer, the ratio of workers to beneficiaries is shifting, and the system's got to adjust. By raising the full retirement age, they're trying to keep up with these, demographic changes.
So it's a balancing act, right? Making sure Social Security can actually pay benefits as more and more people retire.
That's the heart of it. But it also means that folks need to be even smarter about their retirement planning. Even waiting a couple years can make a big difference in how much you get each month.
Good point. We often get stuck on that magic number, our retirement age. But maybe it's more about finding the right time for your own situation.
Exactly. It's about understanding the system and making it work for you.
Okay, how about those Social Security taxes? Any big shakeups there in 2025?
The tax rates themselves, those are staying put for now. But the amount of income that gets taxed, that's going up. So in 2025, you'll be paying Social Security taxes on earnings up to $176,100.
So basically, those higher earners will be chipping in a bit more to keep the system afloat, right?
Exactly. It's one way to address those long-term concerns we've been talking about.
Okay, before we jump ahead, let's clear up something that trips a lot of people up. The earnings test. It can be a real head-scratcher, especially for those thinking about working part-time while collecting benefits before their full retirement age. What's the deal with the earnings test changes in 2025?
The main thing to remember is, if you're working and getting benefits before your full retirement age, what you earn could actually reduce your benefits. In 2025, the limit is going up to $23,400 for those hitting full retirement age later in the year. Earn more than that, and they'll hold back some of your benefits temporarily.
So it's like the more you make from work, the less you get in benefits. until you hit that full retirement age at least.
You got it. And that's why planning is so important. You really got to crunch the numbers, see how working even a little bit might affect your overall income.
It's not as easy as just adding up your earnings and benefits. There's more to it, right?
Right. It's about making choices that, make sense for your goals.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about how you even qualify for benefits in the first place. It all starts with those Social Security credits. What's changing there in 2025?
The basic rule's the same. You generally need 40 credits to get those retirement benefits. Usually that's about 10 years of work. But the amount you got to earn to snag one credit, that's going up a bit to $1,810.
Just a little tweak to the formula. But another reminder that Social Security, it's always adjusting, even in these subtle ways. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm kind of curious about something we haven't really touched on yet, other types of income. What if someone's got investment income or money coming in from rental properties? How does that play into everything?
That's a great question. And it's something we're going to dive into way deeper in the next part of our deep dive. Stick around as we explore how that non-work income can impact your Social Security benefits and what you need to know to navigate this sometimes confusing territory.
Welcome back to our deep dive into, well, all things Social Security. We just finished talking about some pretty big changes coming in 2025, but now let's tackle a question I know a lot of people have. What about income that's not from a traditional 9 to 5, investments, rental properties, maybe even that side hustle you've got going on? How does that income affect your Social Security benefits?
That's a really important question, and it can get a little confusing because it's not the same as that earnings test we talked about earlier. Remember, that test is all about income from working before you hit your full retirement age. But what about income from other places, especially if you're thinking about retiring early?
Exactly. Let's say you've built up a nice nest egg and you're getting like dividends or capital gains from your investments.
Wow.
Does Social Security even care about that?
Generally, no. Investment income, things like dividends, interest, capital gains, all that, it's usually not counted toward the earnings test limit.
So you can be making money from your investments without it messing with your Social Security benefits, even if you haven't reached full retirement age yet.
That's right. Social Security, it's really designed to replace a chunk of your pre-retirement work income, not income from those, passive sources like investments.
Got it. But what about something like rental income? That's not exactly work in the traditional sense, but it's definitely bringing in money.
Yeah, rental income, it can be a little tricky. It really comes down to how involved you are. If you're actively managing those properties, like handling repairs yourself, finding tenants, all that hands-on stuff, then Social Security might actually consider that self-employment income.
And then it could be subject to the earnings test.
Yep, exactly. But if you're more of a, passive landlord, maybe you've got a property manager taking care of most things, then it's less likely to be counted as earnings.
So it boils down to how hands-on you are with those rental properties, right? If you want to avoid any surprises with your benefits before full retirement age, maybe being a little more hands-off is the way to go.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. But honestly, the best move is always to talk to a financial advisor or a tax professional, Get some personalized advice. They can really walk you through how these rules apply to you specifically.
Good advice. It's one thing to get the general idea, but it's another to really understand how it all works in your own life, especially with all these moving parts.
I know, right? And the rules, they can change over time too, so staying informed and getting up-to-date advice is key.
All right, we've been talking a lot about income and how it can affect your Social Security benefits. But let's switch gears for a second, go back to those big changes coming to how we deal with the Social Security Administration. The end of those drop-in visits, remember. Starting January 6, 2025, most services are going to need an appointment.
Big shift, yeah. The SSA, they're saying it's all about making things run smoother, cutting down on those wait times, and just, creating a better experience for everyone.
It's like when the DMV started doing appointments. Some people loved it, some people, well, not so much. What's the thinking behind switching to an appointment system anyway?
Well, the SSA, they've been facing a lot of challenges, staff shortages, budget cuts, more and more people needing help. They're looking for ways to, do more with less. And they see appointments as a way to manage that workload better and offer more consistent service.
So it's kind of a response to those internal pressures they're dealing with.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm also thinking about the people who might not be super comfortable with technology or who have trouble, navigating those automated phone systems. How are they going to handle this whole appointment thing?
I know, that's a real concern. And the SSA is trying to address it. They're offering a bunch of ways to schedule appointments online, by phone, even in person at some offices. And they're training their staff to help people who need it.
So they're trying to cover all the bases. But realistically, some people are probably going to, fall through the cracks, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, there are always going to be some hiccups when you launch a new system, right? But the SSA seems to be really committed to making this transition as smooth as possible. They've been testing out the appointment system in some places, getting feedback, making tweaks along the way.
Hopefully those pilot programs will, pay off. So for those who do need to schedule an appointment, what kind of services are we talking about here?
Pretty much everything. Applying for benefits, updating your info, getting a new Social Security card, even just asking some general questions, it's all going to require an appointment starting in 2025.
Wow. So basically, if you need to talk to the Social Security Administration for, any reason, you better have an appointment.
That's the general idea, yeah. But remember, there are some exceptions. The SSA said they won't turn anyone away if there's an emergency or if someone has special needs.
Okay, that's good to know. It wouldn't be right to, make someone in a crisis jump through hoops just to get help.
Exactly. They're trying to find that balance, between being efficient and still being compassionate. It's a tough one, but they seem to be approaching it thoughtfully.
Okay, so let's recap the key points here. Starting January 6th, 2025, most Social Security services, pretty much everything, will require an appointment. You can schedule those online, over the phone, or by contacting your local office. And while walk-ins are going to be limited, the SSA will still take care of people with urgent needs or those who need extra help.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And remember, the SSA will be giving out more detailed information about this whole transition in the coming months. So stay tuned for updates from them as we get closer to January 2025.
This whole new appointment system, it's definitely a big change for a lot of people. But hopefully with everyone getting ready and the SSC doing a good job communicating, it can actually, make things better for everyone in the long run. Now, in this final part of our deep dive, we're going to tackle the topic that's probably on everyone's mind, the big one, the long-term sustainability of Social Security itself.
The big question, right? Can Social Security really keep up with all the changes happening? Stay tuned as we explore those challenges and what folks are doing to try to make sure Social Security is still there for generations to come.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground already, but now we're getting to the heart of it all. Social Security's long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
Can this program, the one that's so important to so many people, can it really keep up with, everything that's changing?
It's a question that's been, floating around for a while now, and it makes sense why people are worried. Social Security is facing some real challenges. And those challenges, they're tied to some big trends, demographic shifts, economic changes, things that are shaping, the whole country's future.
So let's break down those challenges a bit. What are the biggest things that are making it harder for Social Security to, actually pay out benefits in the long run?
One of the biggest, honestly, is just the aging population in the U.S. We've got the baby boomers, a huge generation who are now starting to retire, and people are living longer too, which means they're collecting benefits for longer.
Right. And we talked about this before, but that ratio of workers paying into Social Security versus people receiving benefits, it's getting smaller and smaller. That's got to put a strain on the whole system, right?
It does, yeah. Social Security, it's basically a pay-as-you-go kind of thing. The taxes that people are paying right now, those are funding the benefits for people who are retired right now. So when you have, fewer workers supporting more retirees, that financial balance gets kind of wonky.
And to make things even trickier, wages haven't been growing as much as they used to. So the amount of money coming into Social Security from those payroll taxes, it's not increasing as fast as it did before.
It's definitely a complex issue with lots of different factors, and it's led to, a ton of debate about how to fix these problems, how to make sure that Social Security is still there for future generations.
So are we talking about, Social Security actually running out of money completely? Or is it, is it more complicated than that?
It's definitely more nuanced than that. Social Security, it's not going to just, disappear overnight. It's got a trust fund built up from, surpluses they had in the past. It acts like a reserve. But the projections from the Social Security Administration, what I say is that if things keep going the way they are, that trust fund could be depleted by around 2035.
2035. That doesn't feel that far away. What happens if that actually, like if the trust fund runs out?
It doesn't mean Social Security just shuts down, thankfully. Even without the trust fund, those payroll taxes that are coming in, they'd still be able to cover a good chunk of benefits. But the program could only pay out like maybe 75 to 80% of what it's promising now.
So not a total collapse, but a pretty big cut to benefits. That would really affect people, especially those who, are really depending on Social Security for their retirement income.
It would, definitely. And that's why it's so important to be talking about this now, to explore, different solutions before it's too late. The longer we wait, the tougher it's going to be to make those necessary adjustments.
So what can we do? What are some of the ideas out there to strengthen Social Security and make sure those benefit cuts don't happen?
Well, the proposals, they generally fall into two categories, increasing revenue or reducing benefits. So on the revenue side, one of the most common suggestions is to just raise the payroll tax rate. Remember, it's at 12.4% right now, split between employers and employees. Even a small bump in that rate could bring in a lot more money.
Yeah, but raising taxes is never exactly a popular move, is it?
Yeah.
Especially when, there's so much pushback against any tax increases these days.
Yeah, that's true. There are always, trade-offs to think about. Another idea for increasing revenue is to, raise or just get rid of the cap on how much income is subject to the Social Security tax. Right now, there's a limit, and only earnings up to that point get taxed. So raising or removing that cap would mean that higher earners contribute more.
That would definitely generate more revenue, but I imagine there would be, some pushback from those higher earners who'd suddenly be paying more in taxes.
It's a balancing act for sure. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to really talk about the pros and cons of each approach.
Okay, so those are some ways to increase revenue.
Yeah.
What about, the flip side? Reducing benefits? What kind of ideas are people talking about there?
One that comes up a lot is slowly increasing the full retirement age. So basically, people would have to work longer before they can get their full benefits.
I can see how that would help with costs, but I'm wondering, is that really fair? Wouldn't it be tougher on people with, physically demanding jobs or people who just can't afford to work longer?
Those are valid points. And then there's also the whole issue of life expectancy, which can be different for people in different income groups, right? Raising the retirement age, it might not affect everyone equally.
It sounds like there aren't any easy answers here.
Yeah.
Every solution seems to have, its own downsides and potential problems.
That's just the nature of these big social policy issues. There's no quick fix. It's going to take careful thought, compromise, and, willingness to listen to different points of view.
So where do we go from here? What's the most likely way to make sure Social Security is still around in the future?
I think the first thing is we have to, move past all the partisan fighting that always happens with this stuff. We need to find some common ground and recognize that this is on all of us.
It's about finding solutions that are, good for the budget and fair to everyone.
Exactly. And that's where, people being informed and engaged comes in. The more we understand about how Social Security works, the different solutions, all of that, the better we'll be at, demanding action from the people we elect.
It's about making sure Social Security is still a program we can all rely on, not just for us, but for future generations too.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a legacy worth protecting, that's for sure.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Social Security. We've talked about those 2025 changes, all those different ways people earn income, and those pretty big challenges facing the program in the long run. It's been a lot to unpack, I know. Numbers, policy details, all that.
But hopefully, through all this, you've gotten a better sense of how Social Security actually works, how it's changing, and why it's so important to all of us.
It's a good reminder to stay informed, stay engaged. Social Security, it's not something you can just, set it and forget it. It takes attention. And we got to keep working to find solutions that work for everyone.
And this conversation, it's not over. The future of Social Security, it really depends on us being smart, on us working together to make sure it succeeds.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another topic that matters to you. Until then, stay curious.